is Crystal Mejia. I'm a senior software engineer in the video technology group at Viacom CBS. I'm joined today by two of my teammates, Matt Ball and Bryce Fisher-Fleig, to talk to you about our innovative approach to distributing events in this seemingly new era of streaming. And so a little background about where we work. VTG's mission is to provide advanced technologies to all the different brands that fall under the Viacom CBS umbrella. We work with a bunch of different combinations of these, and to shed some context, the corporation is clearly made up of quite a few different brands. Every brand has its own unique workflow and integration, and we're streaming a lot of content. So I'll quickly show you some examples. So we've got ET Live, a 24/7 live linear channel with a lot of seatback interactivity that we call DVR. We also have some hybrid approaches like Dabble, where the capturing is happening on-prem, but the encoding is happening in the cloud. We even have huge events like Big Brother Live. It's a DRM-protected channel with 3 months of interactivity and multiple feeds coming in. We even stream ad hoc events for college sports. In partnership with 350 schools, we provide video infrastructure to stream hundreds of concurrent events throughout the school year. And speaking of sports, despite a global pandemic, sports does not seem to be slowing down, and more people are looking to watch these events from the comfort of their home. With great success, we were able to stream the National Women's Soccer League, as well as the UEFA Champions League, which included the Women's League as well. And of course, you can't forget the biggest sporting event of the year, which is Super Bowl. Super Bowl is this event that breaks its own streaming record every year. It's really hard to provision for it ahead of time because we don't know what those numbers will be. And so when we think back to 2 years ago, when we streamed Super Bowl 53, following that event, we really got together as a team and tried to figure out a really great way to come up with a platform that we can sort of create all of these streaming events on demand rather than having to manually provision them. And that brings us to Propeller. So Propeller is our vendor-agnostic live streaming platform used to provision, manage, and create resources in the cloud. And so the goal of Propeller is to be agile. We want to support as many events and workflows as possible. We are vendor agnostic, and so the idea is, depending on the complexity of the event, we can select different encoders, the right encoder for the job. And so with an API-driven approach, we're able to do this all dynamically, no need to manually configure and create events. Speaking of encoding complexity, configuring events it's not an easy task. You have to think of all these different use cases up front. What ingest protocols are you using? What are your downstream requirements? Do you need encryption? Is monetization needed? Is your stream accessible? All these sorts of complexities can really drive down a platform and, of course, increase bandwidth that you need to reserve up front. And so it's important to keep in mind, of course, as the complexity of these events increase, you're going to need more bandwidth. And this is Fastly Altitude, and so you're not really questioning how we create events, but rather how we are able to deliver them with great success. We have several backend services that really help support the Propeller platform, Airspace and Visor being two biggest ones. So imagine this, we have hundreds of concurrent events running on the platform at any given time. How are we monitoring these events? How are we creating CDN configs? We cannot possibly be doing this manually. So I'm going to hand it off to Matt to talk a little bit about Airspace and how they're able to assist us with CDN provisioning.
Thanks for filling us in on Propeller, Crystal. My name is Matt Ball. I'm a senior video DevOps engineer here on the Viacom CBS team. I work on a project called Airspace. I want to give you a high-level overview of that now. Here's the overall architecture and where Airspace fits in relation to the other products that we're talking about today. Before Super Bowl 53, my colleagues and I were tasked with creating all the workflows manually. It was very time-consuming, error-prone. The day of the event went really well. There were a few human errors that were discovered. For instance, we weren't varying correctly for gzip content, so users were getting gzip content whether or not they supported it or not. As we began to migrate most of our day-to-day workflows to Fastly after the event, we realized we needed some sort of configuration management system, and we explored using Terraform, but found it was lacking for our needs. And also many vendors didn't have modules. In particular, some of the vendors that we wanted to use in our multi-CDN workflows. So we decided to make our own tool to do this. Internally, we called it Airspace, and Fastly had a great API that we could leverage. So did many of the other vendors that we wanted to use. And so that's how we decided to go ahead and embark on the journey of creating Airspace. So here's what Airspace does. It's a primarily was in the beginning an ops tool for us to use to more easily create CDNs, keep them consistent. But we also realized we needed to expose a REST API in particular for Propeller so that they could create properties on demand. So we went ahead and exposed that REST API, and now Airspace works hand in glove with Propeller and Visor. And instead of clients creating tickets for us humans to create CDNs, they can create those CDNs themselves programmatically from their API or from the command line, however they want to do it. And it allows teams to concentrate on what they're doing instead of worrying about how to configure the CDN and deliver the content to the viewer. It also allows us to thoroughly test any change before it hits production using a fully functional suite of behave tests. And we've caught many errors before they've hit production. With these behave tests, they just air out and prevent anything from going out. Here are the Airspace components. We have three primary components. There's the REST API, there's the static source, and there are workers that churn through the queue all the jobs that are created to create an Airspace CDN workflow. There's many jobs, many moving parts. And of course, we rely on the various third-party APIs, without which we couldn't actually do any of this work. The static source module dynamically generates Fastly VCL based on what's been requested for other properties that involve Edgecast or CloudFront. It creates rule engine rule sets. It creates lambda edge functions or WAF rules. And the VCL fragments that we generate have been developed over the past few years since Super Bowl 53, and they've been improving over time as we work through issues, work with Fastly on improvements. So today we're able to create single CDN workflows, which are pretty standard and pretty straightforward and fine for a lot of our needs. For more robust delivery needs, we have multi-CDN workflows that we can configure on demand as well. We utilize a Fastly property as both Edge and Media Shield in this case. So all the other CDNs that are in the mix use Fastly as origin, and Fastly then protects our origin. Something very important that Airspace does is maintain our logging configurations for all of our different CDNs. It keeps things consistent across the board. It allows us to update things fairly quickly if the Visor team needs to change the way logs are delivered, the way the logging format is. So we can do that fairly quickly within a matter of minutes. Just change all the configurations across the board. So Airspace has not only made it possible to create optimize video delivery CDN configurations fairly quickly. It's made things a lot easier in terms of keeping things consistent, making updates. And here to talk about what Visor does with all of those logs that it's receiving, and it's a lot of logs from both Origin and CDN Edge, is Bryce Fisher-Fleeg.
Thanks, Matt. My name is Bryce Fisher-Fleeg, and I'm the tech lead on the Visor project. Let's go back to the slide where we look at how all these pieces fit together. So first of all, Propeller spins up all the encoders and the origins, and then reaches out to Airspace to set up the CDN delivery. And really, for up to a few 100,000 concurrents, that's all you need. That'll work great. You have the end-to-end bit flow going all the way from the studio out to your customers and your viewers at the edge. Now let's talk about how Visor fits into that. Propeller internally, when it creates these channels, they call them, they have a unique ID for each channel. Channels are grouped into an organization. So because I asked them to do it this way, Propeller will actually send over the channel ID and the organization ID to Airspace when they ask for the CDN configuration. Airspace will actually inject those values into the logging format. And then every time someone comes to Fastly and sends a request their way, all those values with the channel ID and the organization ID make their way into Visor. Visor will periodically go and scrape AWS to find metrics in CloudWatch about the channels and the origins. And now we can use those same channel IDs and org IDs to connect all the dots all the way through the whole system. With Visor, we also go and collect data from player beacons and from various QoE systems as well. So by having information out from the encoder, from the origin, from delivery, and from players, we're able to see everything happening end to end. And our goal is to provide that information in 1 minute or less if possible. Propeller existed before Visor, so we started designing Visor around Propeller from day one. There's a few special things we had to do to accommodate that. Because Propeller allows these channels to come and go dynamically with user interaction, we had to make sure that we could support that same kind of dynamism on our side. So one of the rules we came up with, and this is the most important one, the live streams only ever exist as data in our system. They never exist as code. The reason that's so important is if we represent these live streams as code, now we'll have to do a code deploy every time there's a new live stream, and we just never be able to keep up with the hundreds of channels that Propeller has at any one time. The other thing we do is we take that metadata that we have, the channel ID and the org ID, and we make sure that every fact table inside Visor uses the same identifiers. What we're able to do is connect all the dots inside our database in a single place. So you can write one query that connects the dots between all of that information. The really cool thing is because of all this dynamism that we support, we don't need any out-of-band signaling. It means as soon as you start sending your data to Visor, we automatically support you out of the box. So let's talk a little bit more about how Super Bowl 55 and Fastly and Visor all fit together. So no one CDN is big enough to do the entire Super Bowl. So we work with 3 or 4 different CDN partners to do the event. But we need to have one place that we stop all the other traffic from coming in and taking down our origin. As you saw on Matt's slide, we trust Fastly to play that pivotal role of protecting our origin and also to be an edge at the same time. And it's worked out great. We're really big fans of Fastly. We love how configurable they are, and we have thousands and thousands of services. So it just feels natural to use them in this pivotal role. When we think about doing Super Bowl, we think about how do we make sure that all of our partners and all of our different vendors that we work with can all see as much information and context as possible. And our key stakeholder we work with there is Fastly. So we actually design our dashboards, our logging formats, our visualizations all around and for the Fastly team. So we actually regularly get together with Gino and the folks in Ops and build out dashboards to their specifications. We see them as really our key customer there. What we're able to offer is that we have more context on what's happening in the origin and encoding side in the Propeller world. We also know what's happening with the other CDNs. And then we have all this QoE data from the players. So we're able to provide all that rich context. But because Fastly really values their customers' privacy, they make a deliberate choice not to collect too much information about every individual request. But that's exactly what Visor does. So we're able to take all that information and provide it back as troubleshooting information to Fastly specifically for this event. We're really excited to provide them all this extra context. So under the hood, Visor uses a relational database. And if you know anything about relational databases, you don't usually think of them as super scalable. But the special database that we have is a product out of Azure called Azure Data Explorer. It's designed to be a horizontally scalable database. But still, we want to make sure we do everything we can to be sure that our database does not fall over. So step 1 of that is capacity planning. We take big events we've had happen recently. The election coming up, we'll use that. The presidential debates that we've had recently. We look at the number of people who are watching those streams, and we determine how much load that put on each component of our system. Then we multiply that out to the traffic volume we expect for Super Bowl, and then we load test against that. One of the things we do that's really unique is because we want to be very sure that nothing goes wrong, we practice having our whole database fall over and seeing how long it takes us to set it back up. And we build SLAs around that as well. In order to be able to do all of that, we spend a lot of time talking to the experts at Azure, at Fastly, at AWS, all across the board. No matter how prepared you are, on game day, anything can happen. So we try to make sure we have lots of safety valves to ensure that we don't fall over, or if we do, we can recover pretty quickly. One of the key things we want to have is the ability to sample our logs. So we throw away some percentage of logs so that we don't overwhelm our system. Fastly doesn't support that out of the box, but we're able to talk to the product managers and different folks at Fastly, and they said, oh yeah, sure, we actually already have VCL code that can do that. So we were able to throw that over to the Airspace team, and they were able to add that feature for us. We said, hey, we're worried about overwhelming any one place that we're trying to send the logs in Azure. Is there any way we can split and load balance? And they said, yeah, I think we've got code for that too. They threw that over the fence, and we were able to put that into Airspace. So now those are features in Airspace as well. By using the big budgets we get for these mega events like the Super Bowl, we're able to drive innovation and add new features that can support even the smallest live streams that Viacom CBS does. And by breaking apart our work into these different products, we're able to go very deep and provide more value and more benefit to each brand in CBS, Viacom CBS, than they could have on their own. If you have any questions or want to talk about anything that we've discussed in our talk, please feel free to reach out to us. Thanks again.